Thank you very much, Professor Evelyn Goh, for this opportunity. Professor Evelyn Goh is a Shadon Professor of Strategic Policy Studies at Coral Bell School of Asia and Pacific Affairs. And right now we are going to talk about your article, Great Powers and Hierarchical Order in Southeast Asia, which has defined the field so far. And I also very blessed to call Professor Goh my supervisor. So I'm very happy that you are giving your time very generously. So your article is multi-layered. What is the biggest misconception about your article?
Thanks, Amir. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to speak to your tutorial groups on Ian Henry's course for the second year. Hello, everybody, and pleasure to be here with you. And apologies in advance that you have been subject to reading this very long article. And I hope you find it useful. To answer Amir's question, the article is indeed, as he calls it, multi-layered. It is very long, and I'd like to give readers the advice that you do need to read it through in one sitting from end to end and to keep track. The biggest misconception about the article relates to the fact that it is multi-layered, etc. The biggest misconception has tended to be that it is one-dimensional, right? People sometimes think that the article is about ASEAN, or they think that the article is arguing about some sort of institutionally led peace in the region, or they think that I'm arguing that Southeast Asia just does omni-enmeshment, full stop. Right? These are the common misconceptions. As you can tell, they all relate to this misplaced idea, because people haven't read it properly, that it is one-dimensional. Of course, the article is not one-dimensional. It is, if I put it simply for you, it has two cumulative parts. That means that you have to read the first part and then understand what the second part is, where the second part is trying to push you further, right? That's that sense of being cumulative. So the first part of the article, which consists of, I think, the first 3 sections, really relates to this question of what are Southeast Asian strategies, for managing great power competition in the region, right? This question is really important to understand, to have an answer to, as I demonstrate, because the existing international relations and international security literature at that time actually provided no answers and no means of approaching that question in a serious way. So the first part of the main part of the article really provides the answer to what are Southeast Asian strategies, okay? And then the second part, which is really the 2 last sections of the article, relates to the second, purpose of the article, which is to say, so what, right? Who cares what the Southeast Asian states are doing in terms of their strategy? What else could we know by understanding what their strategies consist of, right? And that's the bigger implication part at the end, when I say, look, this amounts to Southeast Asian states really trying to facilitate, to help bring about this US-led hierarchical order, and to help ensure, as far as they can as small states, that this order can persist, right? So the article has these 2 parts in them. And of course, the omni-enmeshment and the complex balancing strategies are part of the answers to the first part, okay? So you've kind of got to be aware of the 2 parts and how they build upon each other. Thanks, Mia.
Thank you for that. And your puzzle addressed this quite interesting but contested questions now, right? This idea of relative stability in the post-Cold War order, and emphasizing the 2 main pathways to a regional order, as you said, the only enmeshment of major powers and complex balance of influence. Do you think the characterization of relative stability still prevails? And do you think the 2 main pathways are still relevant for the current, our contemporary East Asia?
And yeah, those are very good questions, and they're questions that I get asked a lot. The answer to the first question, right, about whether relative stability still prevails in the region, has a fairly simple answer at one level, right? There's not been any great power war yet in the region, right? So on that observation, on the basis of that observation alone, I think we can say that there has still remained relative stability in the region, right? Now, let me express a caveat at this point. I'm talking about great power war in the region, right? I'm not suggesting that other forms of conflict that are ongoing in the region are not important. They are important, they affect real lives. But on the basis of great power war, because this is an article about great power Southeast Asian strategies towards great power competition, there hasn't been any great power war yet in the region. So at least there's some basis for saying that, that relative stability post-Cold War has persisted so far. Now, whether the pathways of omni-enmeshment and complex balancing remain relevant, I think the short answer is yes, right? Why do I say that? And this part is important. On what basis do I make the claim that these pathways remain relevant? And the basis for my claim is very clear. It's because regional strategists and policymakers think these remain the most relevant paths, and they act to perpetuate these paths, right? So this is not an argument about whether they're the best paths, they are going to be effective overall, that, at the end of the day, this is the right answer. No, I'm saying that these paths are relevant because Southeast Asian practitioners continue to behave in a way that indicates that these are their preferred paths, right? Did you have a follow-up question, Amir?
Yes, so especially with regards to the system preservations, right? You suggest in your article as well that the crux of order in East Asia is about system preservation as suggested in Hadley Bull's concept of order, that is preserving the broad hierarchical system dominated by the United States. And when it comes to China, it involves integrating China into or enmeshing China into the existing order without having to make too many significant adjustments, right? So what explained this preference? What explained this preference to the US preponderance of power and some sort of reluctance to accept China as, the same equal status as the US, especially when it comes to East Asian regional order?
Okay, that's many, many questions in one question. So let's try and unpack this a little bit so that nobody gets lost. Let's take the first point about, order as system preservation, right? Which is, an understanding of order, which is very important to scholars who work out of the International Society School of Thought, or the English school, if you want to put it that way, that is associated with Hadley Bull. Now, the idea that order, right, is essentially a very status quo oriented exercise, right, is fairly consistent with, the origins of, Bull and other English school scholars who are, after all, trying to theorize, right, the international order in a period in which, the Western leaders of that international order felt that their leadership might be on shaky ground, right? So we're thinking about the 1970s, particularly, when there were multiple challenges to what then, was a largely sort of Western European stroke American led international order. So, that sort of pro-status quo inherent bias in international society approaches comes out of that context, right? Now, that's not to say that, thinking about order in terms of system preservation is not useful. And I think I show in the article that indeed, right, in a region like Southeast Asia, when we talk about order in the region, there is that inbuilt pro-status quo bias. And in Southeast Asia, what that pro-status quo bias, has how that expresses itself in the post-Cold War context has been that desire to essentially maintain the US-led nature or the US preponderant or the US hegemonic nature of regional order. Partly because in large part, most Southeast Asian leaders, even though they may not necessarily like it, felt that the US dominated nature of the regional order was the best option they had, okay? So that gives you the context, right, of that order preserving, system preserving tendency when thinking about order. Now, obviously, any change to that, right, presents very significant problems for a pro-status quo inclination, right? And there has been nothing more disruptive to that pro-status quo inclination in the Southeast Asian context than China's evolving resurgent role in the region, the larger region, right? So the problem is that my article is often, again, misunderstood because people forget that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to present this. I'm trying to privilege how this looks for the Southeast Asian states. Okay, this is really important. When you read this article, you have to keep remembering that I'm telling you the story the way it looks from Southeast Asia. Okay, I'm not trying to tell you the story the way it looks from the United States or from China, which is always the de facto lens of most of the literature. All right. So from the Southeast Asian point of view, right, the aim of trying to preserve US leadership of this hierarchy uniquely comes with the secondary aim of trying to integrate China into this hierarchy. This is a very unique point of view. Countries like Australia would not think that way intuitively.
Very true, yes.
Right? Australian policymakers, for example, just taking them as an example, intuitively see it as a zero sum. You either have a US dominated or you have a China dominated. What do you mean you're going to integrate China? That doesn't make any sense, right? So, but the Southeast Asian contribution to this, particularly important in the 1990s, was this idea that no, you can preserve US hegemony, US-led hierarchy, but you need to integrate China into this hierarchy in a position that gives it a lot of importance, right? But preferably means that still has China coming a little bit underneath the US in this hierarchy. That was what I was trying to express. That preference and that set of ideas was what I was trying to express in the last part of the article. Now, you asked a very important question, to what extent, has this been viable? And why is it that Southeast Asian states thought about it that way, that particular way? And the answer to that is that, they are not comfortable, really. Fundamentally uncomfortable. These are post-colonial states that won independence after long periods of domination by Western imperial powers. In some cases, in Southeast Asia, most cases, Western imperial powers, they won independence after a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, right? So instinctively, Southeast Asian countries are not comfortable with domination by anybody from outside the region. Well, they're also not comfortable with mutual domination, But the US dominance after the Second World War had come to be seen as a form of preponderance and leadership that had brought in, some very significant advantages and benefits to the region. So the US had this sort of number of decades, right, in which key Southeast Asian leaders had come to see, right, US preponderance as a beneficial thing, right? Natasha Hamilton Hart's book is very good on this groupthink in Southeast Asia about the benefits of US leadership in the region. Now, there isn't that similar level of understanding about what Chinese leadership in the region would entail, right? So that discomfort with the idea of Chinese leadership in the region is what led to that preference that yes, China needs to be accorded its important role in the region, which for geographical and historical reasons we cannot escape. But because of that lower level of comfort, that preference, therefore, that Southeast Asians had for still maintaining the US in the region and US leadership in the region as a way to ensure against China's over-assertion or aggression in the region. Okay. And so you put those two things together, and then you get that hierarchical preference, and that's why there is that layering on, if you see what I mean. Okay.
Yes, that's a very, very generous insights, Professor Goh. But if I can just ask a little bit of your time, I want to. My last question is about a word of wisdom. You and Professor Rosemary Foot have written a wonderful research prospectus for studying Asian security that emphasizes on this learning to accept complexity, right? So what would be your message to undergrad students who want to learn deeply about Asian security?
Yeah, I mean, the first message is, that if you would like to do, if you would like to learn more about any part of the Asian region, then you've picked very well, right? If there were one region, which is the region of today and the region of tomorrow and of the decades to come, it is this one. So you've picked the right region to be interested in. The second thing I'd say is, that I'm not sure that I would characterize what Rosemary Foot and I were trying to say as, emphasizing the acceptance of complexity as such, because people sometimes get a bit scared by the word complexity. It suggests that it's too difficult to understand. I think what we do in that article is we show very clearly that, yes, you need a different mindset and you need a certain comfort with non-linear, right, and non-zero-sum ways of thinking to deal with Asia and to understand Asian security. Non-linear and non-zero-sum, these two things are really important. But in the article, we also show that there is quite a lot, in fact, a lot of existing great literature, academic literature out there, which already begins to deal with, that kind of what you're calling complexity in this region in very significant ways. So there's no reason to be discouraged by the region's complexity. And my main piece of advice to students who want to learn deeply about Asian security is please go and read the excellent academic work that has already been done on Asian security. That must be your first step, right? Because you are learning. And please be very, very discerning, to read the work of scholars who have taken the time, right, to develop expertise about the region, right? It doesn't take much to commentate about the region, but it takes a great deal to develop expertise based on field work, primary research, archival research, etc., that is actually about the region, rather than commentaries which reflect much more what non-regional actors think about the region, right? So that would be my advice. When you read books and articles during your courses about Asian security, right? Always try and think, right? What is the author trying to do in this piece, right? Secondly, where are they coming from? Which viewpoints are they trying to spotlight, right? I'm sure you've had experience just like I have. The article title suggests to you that it's about US-China, right? Then you read the article and you realize actually it's not about US-China, right? It's about what the US thinks about China. That is not an article about US-China relations. It's an article about what the US thinks about China. Those are different things, right? So be very aware of that. And if you're aware of that, then you can, you'll be in a better position to, search out and then to familiarize yourself with the literature that is most useful for those of us who actually want to learn about Asia.
Wow, Professor Goh, that is very generous, and thank you very much. And I hope I can see you after lockdown. Thank you very much, Prof. Goh.
Absolutely. Enjoy the course.